So an even better question is what is the mechanism of keeping your power? So I've had some very strange experiences where a ritual was done on me. There were many people involved. I have no idea to this day how that came about, but it was when I was what they call waking up, where those can see you on the other side. I looked into the abyss, it looked back at me. But more so, it's aware that you are aware, because it always knows where you are, the consciousness, the other side, the governing system. But getting back to the main point of what is it trying to do? It reveals both its methodology, where it's following a principle way, which are anti-principles. It starts out with impurifying every situation, and then going through with intelligence and a worldly, corporeal intellect, right? But it's trying to draw your energy out. That's what's happening. It's trying to draw your energy out. So those are the 2 points, is that you have the principles of engagement that it is judging you on and causing you to judge yourself on, to where you're turning toward a false legal system, a false law. Remember Black's Law Dictionary. Remember how our laws, our supposed policies, rules, laws, and procedures actually go against the Constitution. That is the only true law. And then you have the Bill of Rights and so forth. But really, you have those mainstay laws that gave power to the people, that gave power to militia, that gave power, the freedom of speech, the freedom to be. And none of those things are congruent. None of those things are true or reflective of our day. We live in quiet desperation. So that's just the Constitution of the United States and the reflection of that westernized way of thinking through an arbitrary money system globally that creates this hegemony. We don't need to get into that. That's why I just reference and cite different authors, different works. If you haven't read into that by now, I highly recommend that you do, But without those attributes, without the time to be able to read that, without the time to be able to watch, or the resources to watch those videos, you are under attack, and they are drawing your energy out. So that's the second one. The principles, we're not going to, the principles and the process. And the process is that I was actually under the influence of being shrunk within my own body, my soul, through an hours-long ritual that was done on me that I had no idea. I was investigating, and as you investigate and trying to find out, you're walking through their matrix, their labyrinth, where the Masonic Hall is, where the business is done, where the libraries are done, where the theater is. It creates an energy networking system. And then all of these arms of civic activity are connected globally around the world, where the bank is, let's not forget that, where the schools are. In fact, if you were just to look at this as a power supply, you would have an aha moment. So, the tangible, the simple, the base core axis nexus product that they are after is your energy. We take it for granted that, especially when we're young, or if we've lived a privileged life, which many haven't. You have to understand that many people have been sacrificed in order for you, me dipshit, to wake up every morning and take any day for granted. The atrocities and the Stockholm syndrome that people live under, where you get to know many people and they'll disclose things that happen to them. First, there's that validator where you have to figure out if this person's completely full of shit and if they're just narcissists stealing someone else's story. But once you really are able to sink in and understand that this person has been through a living hell and it took them years to be able to talk about this, but what's happening? They have left that event, metanoia, that was heavily impacting on how they would live, who they would go about being in a society, and then there is it's almost like coming out of being kidnapped, being trafficked, kidnapped, sprayed down with high pressure, ultra hot water, almost like the movie The Jacket, that Adrian Brody was in. I think about that, where it's just like you will be put through utter hell, some Nazi science experiment, and then when you come out, you'll be in this paramnesia where you're now putting on the clothes that they hand you. The clothes have a number, but you're not even looking at it. And like a zombie, you're walking down the line, you walk into a job, you walk into a life, and soon you think that you forgot. But the event is never forgotten. The event marks a soul. And this is the sadism that is done on people through shaming. That's always so. There's always, if you get far off track, you'll see somebody, these force bots, if you will, that I like to call them, or these witch bots. When you have certain thoughts, impulses, and you're taking those thoughts and impulses, like today I'm going to do something great. And if you are not validated by them, the dark arbitrators, to go about their work using the pentagram, the inverted pentagram energy that they do follow, if you do not follow the directive of that, it already knew where you'd be, what you'd be doing, and where you should be in proximity to this layering system of consciousness that is put over us. And it wants to draw your energy out. It wants to draw your energy out, plain and simple, like a sponge. It wants to suck your energy out, make you believe less and less in a self, become less self-reliant. Gets into Ralph Waldo Emerson, gets into transcendentalism, Thoreau, it gets into Henry David Thoreau, it gets into all of these other focuses, but don't forget the Hindu origins to that. And so, drawing energy, how do you do that? Why do you think that? See, this is how people are set up, by following a false doctrine of the King David. I almost said King James. And I'm just thinking about Ralph Ellis and some other things that I've been listening to, as far as Jesus having a brother, and then you get into the Apocrypha of John, you get into James, you get into these other characters that were surrounded by Jesus. And what Ralph Ellis does is he talks about how these names have been changed or simplified so that they could get away from the we're talking about validators, right? We're talking about getting away from historical proofs. How do you erase something? Number one, you just, like my name, Barry, it means sword. Call it the sword. Or maybe change the actual name, maybe reverse the name, so that there's these partial truths are seen in the matrix, and a partial truth has to come out. A complete and total fabrication or lie doesn't last throughout history. It doesn't stand. It will eventually rot a person away, at least it's supposed to. So then, when we live under these supposed lies, the integrity, which we all do, I mean, as soon as we sign something, as soon as we agree to something that seems so arbitrary, ductilio, that there's no way we could read through every byline and every little legal term that's used just in the agreement with updating, certain applications, or the agreement to use certain technologies. It's like, nobody reads that. It's kind of like, have you ever read it? Have you ever even just gotten the DMV handbook in front of you and opened it up and changed the terminologies to their base root meanings? So all of this is a discovery of life sciences, sociology, the hidden network that is going on, and that's all fine and dandy. But when it comes down to it, what is the root cause? The root mechanism is to draw your energy out. If they're drawing your energy out, then it is therefore soul energy, soul, sun, soul, the culminating, spinning, swirl on spin energies that, from a molecular standpoint, that is always happening within you. Cell to cell, molecule to molecule, you are alive. Even if you are on life support, you are alive. There is metaphysical energy in you. There's intellectual energy in you. Sometimes you're more alive, not moving at all, than you. But there's an excitatory aspect to this, where some are placed into a certain level of consciousness that they fully accept, where they're exciting the field. Some are put into, like I said, more of a metaphysical walk, where they are exciting. When we talked about Metatron's cube in the last video, it's like you have this monad, you have this power structure that is complete in itself. And any energies, just like quarks that can travel through rocks, any energies that go outside of this are replicating in a sense, right? So we get into mimetic sequencing. What if the Metatron's cube wasn't there, but everything else outside of it was? Well, through backward engineering, through mathematics, through vortices, you'd be able to find and retrack what that is. So we're not going to go off on tangents with that, but it relates to everything on our planet through a codified system or a codified network. You have the ability, and it doesn't make you an evil person, and you're taught through Christendom, which is Christ. It's not Jesus-ism, right? It's Christ. And Christ, the terms, if you want to look up Ralph Ellis, again, go for it. I put a lot of links on my channel with that. So, we're talking about the terminology of a king. You're the king of a universe, which is you, right? You've been taught that you're nothing. You've been taught that you are existentially a part of a greater whole. But you aren't even matriculating, like in a classroom, within yourself with certain informations that allow you to be monad, allow you to be whole, allow you to express what would be called God energy, right? So the money isn't the power. That's what they want you to think. Anything outside of you is not the power. Ne te quae siderius extra. Do not seek yourself outside yourself, right? Transcendentalism. For you to be fed off of when they finally come and attack you, which happened to me. They will think that you are shrinking down. There are other entities that are at work while these rituals are occurring. I literally saw the room become larger than me, and I felt myself shrinking, and yet I was just standing there. I felt short. I felt small. I'm 6 feet tall. I felt reduced. And if you don't stand for anything, And this is what heavily brings in this paradigm of a right-left, dichotomy. But you can stay stuck in that also. All you need to know is whether or not you are pure or impure. And whether or not the tree of life, which is purity, or the tree of knowledge, which is the left-hand path, which is impurity. So that's why the apple, why evil, seduced Adam. That's why Lilith went into these rituals at the Red Sea. Depends on what folklore or mythos that you're following. But, and having... it's a really dark thing, giving birth to demons and so forth, but you have this energy. Whether or not those things happened, there's a base of behavior of if you go into self-indulgence and pleasure, and that is your base, that's the lima, we must first impurify, and if we come from sex, and if we go through the process of, through sex, coming back into re-embodiment, reincarnation, what have you, then sex is the center. So that's where the impurity, the tree of knowledge comes from, and then the knowledge around that to become more advantageous. But if you go on to the right-hand path narrative, you're talking about purity as a constant. The fact that whether or not it doesn't matter, regardless of how you came along, how you came to be, what brought you here, that the here doesn't exist. Because it is theoretically hung in a place where it is non-active. Why do you think the carbon-based world, all the changes that you see, and you're following the market, people were doing this 100 years ago. It's like nothing's really changed. There's only a moving of these objects that represent energy, like even an antique represents a certain energy. When you start to follow the history, even within us, there's a biohistory there. But our biohistory isn't truly what we are. The purification, our ability, now that we know that we've been robbed from, now that we know what they're after and what they're doing, now that we know conclusively, at least I do, and I hope that you understand this as well, to protect your soul force and to culminate into even greater good, which is purity and purification, and to know that that is your true identity, whether or not it has committed crimes through you, it has heavily influenced you, it has defamed you. Now you have no family members that stick by you, you have no real friends that believe in you, your bank account's gone, your credit score's crap, your straw man's dead and it doesn't really even exist. That's the mechanism that they go through with that 5-pointed pentagram. But all that is bullshit. Because what you are and what you chose and what was kept from you deceptively as you were trying to go about working in their environment, which held you back to their financial system, as you were trying to raise your children who were actually being raised by the left-hand path, taught all the bullshit. And now it's just evident with what they're learning, right? Through this whole woke thing, but I digress. And then through spirituality, when you were trying to find that pure center and you existentially went out and walked into their doors, within their false, sanctified, holy with an H system that would degrade your purity and say, no, that doesn't really matter. It's about who you are in society. It's about your deeds. And so you see where the Masons have taken this. All you have to do is read Morals and Dogma by Albert Pike. But there's something much deeper in there. And it's not to detract from Rudolf Steiner's assertions, heavy proclamations, that there was a spiritual Mason. So that's the heavy burden that's been placed on us, but it's actually not so heavy, because as they advance toward us and start to make their game so revealing as to say that they will steal your soul energy, your soul force, everything that you stand for and have culminated for, simply because you are ignorantly and not out of your own choice. That's how society's built. You live within their matrix, and if you know this, you are so much more powerful than them, because there's actually absolutely nothing that in society, if you go out there, that's going to do anything but deceive you. From the logos that we look out, from the doors to the doors that we enter when we go in and get our cup of coffee, to the monetary system that we use, we are signing ourselves, sinning ourselves, mooning ourselves back to, and that's what the moon is all about. That's a whole different story, and why it's there in procession, hanging over us, and why it's so there was most likely the removal of a large planetary body within our solar system, and then to balance this out precisely what the moon was construct and put there, but for many other mechanisms, because they understood this alchemy, this high science of soul manipulation, and what the real juice is, the real power, what the real currency is. It's people, it's us, So Jordan Maxwell did a good job, aka Jordan Maxwell Russell Pine, who just passed away a couple of years. He did a good job with his limited ability to be, information, to be able to look at this and start to dissect how how the money system, the money trail led into certain political affiliations and families and so forth. But what we're really getting into here now and understanding and is being disclosed by Nathaniel Gillis, Robert Bigelow, and other people emergent, such as myself, just on another layer, another level, which is to say that the disclosure of the business, the true business of the true currency, of the soul energy, of the soul force, is happening on the other side in a way that's extremely scary and should be scary to us, and not until we come face to face with it, unfortunately, and are heavily impacted, metanoia, to change the way we think, change our direction, are we really going to start understanding this. And that's what this talk is. It's for those, the few, the esoteric, right? It's to nate quae various extra, extra. And it's to understand that we live off of our soul force in culminate. But there are many energies that float around us all the time, and what we are is what we become and what we draw in. And you are given free license. You are being given free will, and this is a very scary thing, because now you'll see the war that's been going on all around you, and why you feel drained and weak when someone, like a con artist, a narcissist, a malignant narcissist, talks constantly. And you think, this person doesn't have any intellect, they don't have any energy, all they do is mimic and copy. And you don't see the dark entity that they are before you, that they realize, they know within themselves, and you can feel it, that they reached this level of desperate, malingering, you get into the concept of walk-ins, right? Where they have become an empty avatar. They have become an empty shell. The malignant narcissist, if you know one, has now become an avatar, a force spot for evil energies to roost and house themselves in. And they think that they have gone through they have in a sense gone through their own metanoia, where they reached this low-level, desperate, worm-like state where they barely had any life in them, and it is essential to keep them alive partially, but to take away everything that holds, that is true, that has truth, that has purity in them, right? So there's a process of this destruction. I think a little bit of Harry Potter here, Voldemort and all this stuff, right? So it's going through this destruction, and you are given license once that window, once that opening is opened upon you, and you know it, to feed that energy back off of them. Yeah, it sounds crazy. In fact, it sounds like you're being evil by every bit of information that we're being taught, everything in society. But when you get down to it, and you think about those teachers that negatively impacted your life, the people in the churches that negatively impacted your life, the parents, the siblings, the so-called friends, and the weird, ominous feeling that you had that these people just seem to be triggered and are working in concert. But when I don't do this anymore, when I'm not walking pure, and I just try to fit in, they attack me less. And that's where this pathos, rhetoric, sway comes in, where throughout your lifetime, you're inducted now, you're an initiate. You will either go to the left-hand path or the right-hand path. And you are not following the left-hand path to keep yourself alive, culminate this energy like a sponge. Can you do it? That's the main question here. Can you do it? And that leads us into the next little talk here. Are you capable of understanding who you are at the essence? Are you aware of it? Do you know what your center is? And do you know that if you're not living true to yourself, you become food for them? You don't have any middle ground. You're literally living as a food source when you follow a neutral path. You are not in a place there is a war happening. It's like you saying, I'm going to choose a neutral path. I'm going to meditate. And the two sides are shooting at each other. I mean, there's a rally going on, and there are war cries, and you're inevitably only have a certain amount of time, and it's like, no, I'll self-immolate and disappear. And it's kind of like, you're being killed. You're being consumed. You're being destroyed. Or there might be a non-participatory mechanism that is engaged here. But either way, you are not, you've already been engaged in. You've already been stolen from. You've already had the energy leached out of you. And now the window is open where now you're going to need to do these meditations. And you're not doing it for self. You're not doing it for selfhood. You're not doing it to gain or ascertain any monetary, any existential ideas or concepts. You're doing it because your soul is on the line and the energy is being stolen from you. Something to heavily postulate and think about. Because you may refute what I'm saying, but in the sanctity of the moment, when you're lying there and you have that strange feeling, and you're starting to see people's faces, see the teeth, see the eyes, see someone you've never seen before with a very dark face, and they're aware of you and they're looking at you all around you, when you have that where it's like you've looked into it, it's looked back at you, you're either on one side or the other. And so I do believe that more extreme sects of Buddhism, where they deny this life and they live in a pure way, I'm assuming, and they become sanctified in the rejection of this life, and that they never die. I mean, there's even remains of some Buddhist monks of certain sects that their bodies haven't gone into the traditional system of degradation and rot. It's pretty crazy to look at, but a heavy preservation. But at the same time, there is a holy war happening, and culminating and drawing in and taking back energies which don't belong. I guess a real simple way of putting this into, as a summary here, would be the fact that the left-hand path produces nothing. The narcissist produces nothing. They're incapable. All they can do is either steal as a chameleon from people, the theft of jobs and so forth, and then they become of the slave morality. They become a slave to the system where they have to work and toil because there is no blessing, right? And those of the right-hand path have the energy, are producing the pure source energy through them. They are living with purity and principles. No matter what you started out doing, no matter what's happened to you again, no matter how these dark entities have worked through you, you didn't know. You weren't aware. You weren't given the rules of the game. And even now, it's like, that's what I'm trying to express to you, is that there are rules to the game. You are within a matrix. You are within a labyrinth of lies and deceit. And where our minds go and where our energies have gone is to support this hegemony, this oligarch, globalist system of power and control, because that's where our minds are. That's where our focus is the worry of money. When you're worrying about money, when you're worrying about what other people think about you, when you're worrying about your social credit scoring system, none of that exists. The thing that's true is your purity, your purification, and that is what brings you unfathomable, pure value, because you are an identity, and the left-hand path has no identity. They're chameleons. They're trying to copy you by living off of a mimetic sequence and then assuming the rest of that sequence. And by you just being pure and true within yourself, and then, the actions that you take, you will do your best to be as principle-based as you possibly can. But note that you are surrounded in a sea of evil. You are surrounded, you are living within the matrix. So this is where the meditations that people are aware, the people that are aware of this fully, and cannot go a day living in any sort of falsity or mistruth, will not pander to the anti-principles, as I call them. So the first thing that happens, just to wrap this up, this is more on esotericprinciplesoflight.blogspot.com, which has almost 400,000 views, has international viewership from all around the world, is your job is to purify, and their job is to impurify. Their job is to sacrifice the pure, and your job is to sacrifice yourself. So it already starts to put you in this predicament where if you're not living pure and you're not guarded against not being around these evil people, and trust me, the more pure that you get, they won't be able to stand being around you, okay? So the answer is to become, and to realize yourself that you already are, a greater power than them. That even the thing that's working through them, all they are is a little robot. That's all they are. So once you start to sacrifice the time and energy that you are putting in, you start to understand that that's what I'm doing right now, is existentially, I am 100% contained within myself, within my monad, within my system. And by practicing these principles, it's only a reverberation out of, I'm going to try to help you out. I've tried to do that with people one-on-one, and it has gotten me nowhere. They turn on you. But only in the solace of self-reflection are you going to come to certain information such as this. So then it gets into the third is a muting of your expression, right? So you have purity, you have sacrifice. They want to mute your expression. Your third is to express yourself. That's what I'm doing right now. Their courts will mute you because you're within the sea of sin. They want you to think that you can wade your way through this. Those courts are going to disappear soon. They're not even going. Every ridiculous law that we have thought was universal and that we lived under, including the immutable laws, so-called immutable laws, those will all be erased when the physics change, and they will. And that's the whole point of this, is that the mind, this dark matter, the consciousness, is that pervading quality that dictates the world that we live in. And so there's going to be a mass metanoia that occurs all around, a huge cataclysmic change of thought, information, and qualities of value. The intrinsic personal value is going to become much more important. It's going to be known. It's not just a subjective concept. Then we get into the fourth, which is really the third, because you have purity in itself. The purity in itself is enough. That you should go back into your roots as a pure son of God, we will call it, to go back into the pure source energy, and to realize that you never left, and that all of this was just a ridiculous play where you were trying to help people out. So when you really believe in someone, when you have this family structure, whether it's a work structure, a family structure, just people, they will their goals and what they worship and what they regard as their God will always work against you, and it's very rare that you would find. So that's really the subject of the day of this study of Jesus, but more so John the Baptist, more so the other Messiah figures, to look into this and go, is this just a grand story of mimicry, of narcissism? Where's the true story? And the true story exists in you. Whether or not we find any proof of this outside of ourselves, that someone else did this, you got to get away from that. Look at what they're doing with history. You know, Napoleon talking about history just being an all-out lie. It's like you have people in the know, you have people on the inside disclosing this and telling you. You're never going to find out the entire truth. Like Ralph Ellis, great information, and I'm going to take a lot of that to heart, but I'm not going to rely on anything that I have out here above my intrinsic knowing of the pure source that I am, the pure source that I come from, and the pure source that I will go back into, and that everything else is a really bad dream, right?